The boardroom on the top floor of Okoro Group had never felt this heavy before. Men and women in expensive suits sat around the long table with fear on their faces. The large screen on the wall kept showing the same ugly truth. The company's stock was falling fast. Every few seconds the numbers dropped again. At the head of the table sat Lawrence Okoro, the young head of Okoro Group. He was known everywhere as a sharp businessman. He was handsome, calm, and hard to read. Even now, with disaster sitting in front of him, his face did not show panic. But the silence around him said enough. The pressure in that room was choking. On Lawrence's right sat Mr. Adebayo, the finance director, a man in his late 50s who had worked with the company for many years. Sweat shone on his forehead as he stared at the screen. On Lawrence's left stood Grace, his personal assistant, a smart young woman who had been receiving call after call for the past 20 minutes. Her face had lost color. "The stock has dropped by another 6%, Mr. Adebayo said quietly. Nobody answered him. One of the senior executives cleared his throat and lowered his head. "Sir, the four families are working together against us. They have blocked suppliers, pulled investors, and pushed bad news into the market. At this rate..." He stopped. He did not need to finish. Everyone in the room already knew what he meant. Another executive leaned forward and spoke with shame in his voice. "We are sorry, Mr. Okoro. We have failed you. We did all we could." Mr. Adebayo sighed and rubbed his face. "If this continues for another hour, the damage may be too much to control." Grace looked at Lawrence, hoping he would say something that would calm everyone down. But Lawrence only looked at the screen. His hands were resting on the table. His jaw was tight. He looked calm, but inside him, anger was rising. He had spent 5 years building Okoro Group into something strong. He had worked day and night. He had made difficult choices. He had fought his way through rooms where older men thought he was too young to lead. And now the people who could not beat him fairly had joined hands to bring him down. A bitter smile almost touched his lips, but it did not stay. "So this is their final move," he said at last. His voice was low, but everybody heard it. No one spoke. Then the boardroom door opened. At first, nobody even turned. It seemed like a small thing in the middle of such a crisis. But then, the soft sound of a mop bucket wheel rolled across the floor, and several heads turned with irritation. A young woman in a cleaner's uniform stepped into the room. She wore a simple pale blue shirt and dark skirt, with her cleaning gloves folded into one hand. Her hair was neatly tied back. Her face was fresh, calm, and far too beautiful for anyone to ignore for long. But it was the kind of beauty that did not beg for attention. Quiet, clean, simple. This was Lillian Obiora. She worked in the building as one of the cleaners, and most people hardly noticed her unless they wanted something moved or swept. She had come to do her work. But the moment she stepped in, she could feel the tension in the room. The fear, the anger, the helplessness. Her eyes moved once across the boardroom, then stopped on Lawrence. He was seated like a man carrying fire inside his chest and refusing to let anyone see the smoke. Grace frowned at once and stepped forward. "Not now. Can't you see we are in a meeting? Come back later." Lillian did not move. Grace pointed toward the door. "Please wait outside." Still, Lillian stayed where she was. Then she spoke in a calm voice that made the room somehow quieter. "I am not here because I want space to clean," she said. "I need a laptop." For 1 second, nobody reacted. Then the room almost exploded. Mr. Adebayo stared at her as if he had heard wrong. One executive let out a short laugh of disbelief. Another looked openly offended. Grace blinked. "What did you say?" "I need a laptop," Lillian repeated. Grace's voice hardened. "Do you understand what is happening here?" "Yes," Lillian said. "You do not," one of the executives snapped. "This company is in the middle of a financial attack, and you walked in here to ask for a laptop?" Another man shook his head. "This is madness." Grace looked embarrassed on Lillian's behalf. "Please leave before security comes." But Lillian's eyes did not leave Lawrence. Something in that made him pause. He had seen many things in business: fear, greed, pride, fake confidence. But what he saw in her face was different. She was not joking. She was not confused. And strangely, she was not afraid. Lawrence leaned back slightly and studied her. "Why do you need a laptop?" Every face turned to him. Grace looked shocked. "Sir?" Lillian answered without delay. "Because if you give me one now, your company may not fall today." Silence. Heavy silence. The kind that makes people wonder if they have just heard foolishness or truth. Mr. Adebayo let out a dry laugh. "Sir, with respect, this is not the time for games." One of the executives muttered, "This is what desperation has brought us to." But Lawrence was still looking at Lillian. "Grace," he said. She turned. "Yes, sir?" "Give her your laptop." The whole room froze. Grace's mouth opened slightly. "Sir?" "Give it to her." Grace hesitated, then slowly handed the laptop to Lillian. Lillian stepped closer to the table and placed the laptop down. Her fingers moved fast over the keyboard. For a cleaner, she looked far too comfortable in that moment. Mr. Adebayo stood up halfway from his seat. "What is she doing?" Grace checked the screen over Lillian's shoulder and gasped. "Sir, she just moved 10 million naira from the reserve account." One executive slammed a hand on the table. "What?" "Call security!" another shouted. "She's mad!" But Lawrence lifted a hand, and the noise stopped. "Let her continue," he said. Lillian did not waste a second. She made 2 quick trades, pulled out of one weak line, pushed into another, entered numbers, exited one position, opened another. She was not rushing, but she was not hesitating either. Nobody in the room understood what she was seeing. Then Mr. Adebayo looked up at the screen. His eyes widened. "The drop has stopped," he said. Grace turned sharply toward the wall screen. It was true. The stock had stopped falling. For one breathless moment, the number held still. Then it moved. Up. Nobody said anything. Another rise came. Then another. Grace covered her mouth. Mr. Adebayo took off his glasses as if he needed to clean his eyes to be sure. One of the executives sat down slowly like his knees had suddenly become weak. "It's climbing," Grace whispered. Mr. Adebayo grabbed the edge of the table. "It's climbing!" The room came alive. "The sell pressure is weakening. Buyers are returning." "How is this happening?" Lawrence stood up. For the first time since Lillian entered the room, his calm face broke. Not with fear this time, with shock. He looked at the screen, then at her. The same woman they had almost thrown out of the room was standing in front of them with a borrowed laptop, and the company that had been heading toward collapse was breathing again. Not only breathing, fighting back. Lillian closed the laptop gently and turned to Grace. "You can have it back." Grace collected it with both hands, still too stunned to speak. Mr. Adebayo looked at Lillian like he had never seen her before in his life. "Who are you?" But Lillian only gave a small smile and turned to Lawrence. "There are still some minutes before the market closes," she said softly. "If this turns into a real miracle, I want just one thing." Lawrence took one slow step toward her. "What?" She held his gaze. "Support Adeyemi Construction with a small part of one of your coming projects." Mr. Adebayo frowned. "Adeyemi Construction?" Lawrence did not answer him. He was still looking at Lillian. A cleaner had walked into his boardroom at the worst moment of his company's life and turned death into hope in less than 5 minutes. There was nothing ordinary about that. Nothing at all. "Who are you really?" Lawrence asked quietly. But Lillian only lowered her eyes, picked up her cleaning gloves, and turned toward the door. "I still have other offices to clean," she said. Then she walked out, leaving behind a room full of powerful people who could do nothing but watch her go. And for the first time that day, Lawrence Okoro forgot about the enemies trying to destroy his company. Because now, he had only one thought in his mind. The woman in that cleaner's uniform was hiding something. And whatever it was far bigger than anyone in that room had guessed. For some seconds after Lillian left the boardroom, nobody moved. The room was still full of people, but it felt strangely empty. The fear that had been hanging over everybody a few minutes ago had changed into something else. Shock, confusion, disbelief. On the screen, Okoro Group's stock was still rising. Not wildly, not like magic, but enough to tell everybody the company had been dragged back from the edge. Mr. Adebayo was the first to sit down fully. He removed his glasses again and cleaned them slowly, as if doing that would help him understand what had just happened. Grace was still holding her laptop close to her chest. "Sir," she said at last, "who is she?" Lawrence did not answer at once. He stood where he was, his eyes still on the door Lillian had just passed through. Then he turned back to the screen, looked at the numbers for a few seconds and faced the room again. "The market is calming," he said. Nobody replied. He looked at Mr. Adebayo. "Stay on top of every movement till closing." "Yes, sir," Mr. Adebayo said quickly. He turned to Grace. "You." "Yes, sir. I want everything on that woman." Grace blinked. "The cleaner?" "Yes." He picked up his phone from the table. Quietly. Her full name, where she lives, how long she has worked here, who brought her in, who she talks to, everything. Grace nodded at once. "I understand." Lawrence's face remained calm, but his voice had changed. It had become deeper. "A cleaner does not walk into a crashing company and read the market like that. There is something I'm not seeing." Grace hesitated. "Should I involve security?" "No," Lawrence said at once. "No noise. I do not want her scared. I do not want her warned. Just find out who she is." "Yes, sir." Lawrence looked once more at the door. Somewhere in the building, that young woman in a cleaner's uniform was still moving from office to office with her mop and bucket, as if she had not just done what his top executives could not do. For the first time in a long time, something outside business had caught his full attention. And he did not like not knowing. Lillian finished cleaning the last office on that floor, but her mind was not there. As she pushed her bucket slowly down the quiet passage, she could still feel Lawrence's eyes on her from earlier. He had looked at her like a man who had seen a locked door suddenly opened by itself. She let out a slow breath. She had not planned to step into that boardroom. She had only meant to pass, do her work, and leave. But when she heard the voices, saw the panic, and understood what was happening, she had not been able to ignore it. Now things had changed. A man like Lawrence Okoro would not let something like that pass. He would ask questions. He would dig. And once men like that began to dig, they did not stop easily. Still, that was not what troubled her most. Her mind was on home, on Femi Adeyemi, on the cake she would buy before going back, on the smile she expected to see on his face when he learned that the company project he had been hoping for had finally come through. And more than that, her mind was on the truth she had decided to tell him that night. Enough was enough. She had hidden too much for too long. When she reached the back staircase near the staff exit, she stopped. A black luxury car was parked outside. Then another one behind it. Her heartbeat changed. Two men in dark suits stood near the car, respectful and still. And beside them stood an older man in neat traditional wear, his grey beard trimmed, his face calm, his posture straight. The moment he saw her, he stepped forward. "First, young madam," he said softly. Lillian closed her eyes for one brief second. Uncle Joseph. Uncle Joseph had been with her family for many years. He was one of the very few people who had known her since she was a little girl. He was not a blood relative, but she trusted him more than some people who shared her name. He bowed his head slightly. "I have been waiting here for a long time." She gave a faint smile. "You still talk to me like I'm 12. And you still make difficult choices like you are 40, he replied. That almost made her laugh, but it did not last. She looked at the guards, then back at him. "Why are you here?" Uncle Joseph's expression softened. "Because the time is up." Lillian's smile faded. He continued gently. 2 years, madam. You said you needed 2 years away from the family fortune and noise. 2 years to live quietly. 2 years to follow your heart and see if love alone could make you whole. Lillian looked away. "You insisted," he said. "The chairman agreed because he could never refuse you for long. But the 2 years are over now. You are supposed to return. The family is waiting. The company is waiting. Your place is waiting. For a few moments, Lillian said nothing. Outside, the late afternoon breeze moved lightly around them, but it did nothing to cool the heat in her chest. "I know," she said at last. Uncle Joseph studied her face carefully. "Then why are you still here?" Lillian held her cleaning gloves tighter in her hand. "Because Femi only just found his feet," she said quietly. "His position in his family company is still new. The people around him are still watching him. If I leave now, things may shake under him again." Uncle Joseph frowned. "You have already done more than enough." She shook her head. "Not yet. First, young madam. He believes things are turning around," she said, cutting in softly. "And they are. I helped make sure of that today." Uncle Joseph looked at her for a long moment. "You went too far today." Her eyes met his. "The situation needed it. That Lawrence will not forget your face." "I know. He will investigate." "I know that too." He sighed. "Then come home before matters become more complicated." Lillian's face softened. Just a little more time. Uncle Joseph shook his head slowly, but he could see from her eyes that she had already made up her mind. "You still want to stay because of that man?" "Yes," she said simply. He was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Does he know who you are?" Lillian smiled, and this time the smile carried a little hope. "Not yet." Uncle Joseph stared at her. "But tonight," she said, "I will tell him." He did not speak. She looked down at her hands and then back at him. "Today is his birthday. The project from Okoro Group will be his gift. When I get home, I will tell him everything. It is time he knows who I truly am." Uncle Joseph's face changed a little at that. He looked like a man who wanted to speak but did not want to be the one to break a dream before it had tested itself. At last he said, "The family has waited 2 years. Do not make them wait forever." "I won't." He nodded slowly. "Call me if anything changes." "I will." He stepped aside, and the men near the car opened the door for him. Before entering, he looked back at her once more. "You were not raised to live in hiding, madam." Lillian said nothing. He gave her one last respectful nod and entered the car. She stood there and watched the convoy drive away. Then she looked down at her uniform. For 2 years she had lived like this, quiet, hidden, ordinary. Not because she lacked anything, but because she had loved a man and wanted a life that felt real. A small life, a warm life, a simple life. And tonight, she told herself, that life would begin honestly at last. By evening, Lillian had changed out of her uniform and bought a birthday cake with the little gold writing she knew Femi would like. She held the box carefully as she made her way home. Her heart was light again. She thought of his face when she would tell him the project had gone through. She thought of his surprise when she would tell him that the woman he married was not just a cleaner struggling through life. She thought of how hurt he might first feel that she had hidden so much. But after that, she believed he would understand. He loved her. At least that was what she still believed. When she reached the house, she noticed at once that the sitting room light was brighter than usual. The front door was not locked. She stepped inside with a small smile on her face. "Femi," she called, "I'm back." Then she stopped. The smile died before it could settle. Femi was seated in the living room. Beside him sat his mother, Mrs. Margaret Adeyemi, a sharp-faced woman who had never truly liked Lillian. Her lips were already bent with the kind of expression that meant trouble. Next to her was Clara Adeyemi, Femi's younger sister, who always followed whatever her mother said. And on the single chair opposite them sat a well-dressed woman with flawless makeup and a proud little smile on her face. This was Vanessa Nwosu. Lillian had seen Vanessa once before from a distance, but never like this. Never inside her home, never seated like someone who belonged there. The cake box suddenly felt heavier in her hand. She looked at Femi and forced a smile. "What is going on?" Femi did not smile back. His face was cold, too cold. Lillian's fingers tightened around the cake box. "Femi?" He stood up. For one moment, she thought maybe he wanted to take the cake from her. Instead, he said, "Let's end this marriage." The words did not enter her heart at once. They just hung there in the room, strange and ugly. She gave a short laugh. "What kind of joke is that?" "I'm not joking," Femi said. The smile left her face. Mrs. Margaret folded her arms with satisfaction. Clara looked away, as if she wanted to pretend this was not cruel. Vanessa did not even pretend. She looked pleased. Lillian turned fully to Femi. "What did you say?" He did not raise his voice. That made it worse. "I said I wanted divorce." The cake box slipped a little in her hand. For a second, she could not speak. Then she looked from his face to the others and back again. "What happened? Did I do something wrong?" she asked. "Did somebody say something to you? Femi, what is this?" Vanessa crossed one leg over the other and smiled faintly. Mrs. Margaret answered instead. "What happened is that my son has finally entered a new level in life." Clara nodded quickly. "Exactly." Mrs. Margaret continued, "His status has changed. His company is rising. Important people now know his name. Do you think a man like that can keep dragging a woman like you around forever?" Lillian looked at Femi. "So this is from your mother?" "No," he said. "This is from me." That one hurt more than all the rest. She stared at him. "Why?" Femi looked away for one brief second before facing her again. "Because I can't keep pretending." Her throat tightened. "Pretending what?" "That this still works." Vanessa gave a quiet laugh under her breath. Femi continued, "My life is not what it used to be. Things are changing fast. I've worked hard to get here." Lillian almost spoke, but he went on. "And Vanessa has been a big part of it." Mrs. Margaret smiled proudly. Clara's eyes lit up. Lillian looked at Vanessa. Vanessa lifted her chin a little. "Some people bring good luck. Some people only bring struggle." Lillian's face changed slowly. Femi drew in a breath and said the words that finally cut through her. "Vanessa is my lucky charm. Everything I have now came through her." The room went silent. Lillian heard the words clearly. On the very same day she had stepped into a boardroom and helped secure his future, the man she had done it for was standing in front of another woman and saying his success came through her. For a moment, Lillian could not even feel her feet. She only stood there, holding his birthday cake, as her heart broke quietly inside her chest. And deep inside that silence, one terrible truth began to rise. Something was very wrong. And the night she thought would bring joy had only just begun. The room stayed silent after Femi spoke. She looked at Femi again, hoping to see some sign that this was anger talking, or confusion, or pressure from his mother. But his face stayed hard. Mrs. Margaret was the first to break the silence. "You heard him," she said. "There is no need to stand there like a statue. This matter has already been decided." Lillian slowly placed the cake on the table beside the door. Her hand shook a little, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "Femi," she said quietly, "look at me and tell me this did not start today." He looked at her, but there was no softness in his eyes. She swallowed. "When you had nothing, who was with you?" Vanessa shifted in her chair with annoyance, but Lillian did not look at her. She kept her eyes on Femi. "When your family name meant nothing outside this house, who stood by you? When you came home tired and angry because another deal failed, who sat with you and told you not to give up? When you said your head was full and you could not think straight, who stayed up with you at night and helped you talk through your problems?" Femi's jaw tightened. "When things were so bad that you almost stopped believing in yourself, who was here?" she asked. "Who cooked for you? Who washed for you? Who stayed with you when your dreams looked dead?" Mrs. Margaret clicked her tongue. Enough of this drama. But Lillian continued as if she had heard nothing. "Who kept choosing you again and again?" For 1 second, something moved in Femi's face. Then it vanished. He gave a short, cold laugh. "Is that what this is about?" Lillian stared at him. "You are talking as if you did something special," he said. "You cooked, you washed, you encouraged me. Any woman could have done that. Any housemaid could have done that. The words landed like stones. Clara laughed softly and looked away. Vanessa smiled. Lillian did not speak. Femi took a step forward. What I need now is not a woman who only knows how to stay in the kitchen and act like a suffering wife. I need a woman who can stand beside me in the kind of life I am entering now. I need a wife who can help me rise higher in business and in society. His eyes dropped to her simple clothes. Not some low-life cleaner I house and feed. That one almost knocked the air from her chest. For 2 years, she had hidden her name, her money, her family, her background. She had done it for love. She had done it because she wanted him to see her heart before anything else. And now the same man was standing in front of her and talking to her like she was a burden he had carried by pity. Vanessa stood up slowly, enjoying every second. "Do you hear that?" she said with a small laugh. "At least now the truth has come out." She looked Lillian up and down in a way that carried both mockery and pride. "You should actually be grateful," Vanessa said. "Not every man will keep a woman like you for this long." Mrs. Margaret smiled in support. Vanessa moved a little closer. "Look at yourself. You should know your level. Do you really think you fit into the life Femi is entering now? A cleaner? A woman who smells of soap water and mopping sticks? A woman who thinks carrying food tray and bending over a sink is the same thing as helping a man build power?" Lillian's fingers slowly closed into her palm. Vanessa was just beginning. "You should be thanking heaven that he even married you at all. You were useful when he needed comfort. That season has passed. A man does not climb and still carry the same old load on his back." Clara laughed openly now. Vanessa's voice grew sharper. "You are a village-minded woman in city clothes, a small-minded woman trying to sit where important people will soon sit. You are too ordinary for the life ahead of him. Too plain, too small, too low." Mrs. Margaret nodded with satisfaction. "Exactly." Vanessa folded her arms. "Femi has outgrown you. Accept it with the little dignity you have left." Lillian turned from Vanessa and looked at Femi. He did not stop her. He did not defend her. He just stood there and let another woman tear her down inside the house where she had spent 2 years of her life. Something in her chest went quiet. Not dead, just quiet. Then she spoke. "You all think this rise came by chance," she said. Mrs. Margaret rolled her eyes. "Here we go." Lillian ignored her. "The Adeyemi family did not get here by luck. For 2 years I have been helping this family quietly from behind." The room paused. Then Clara burst into laughter. Vanessa laughed too, louder this time. Mrs. Margaret shook her head like she had just heard madness. Femi even smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "You?" Clara said between laughs. "Help us! How?" Vanessa pressed a hand to her chest dramatically. "Please don't tell me this is where she starts saying she built the company with her mop." Mrs. Margaret spoke with full contempt. "You can barely help yourself. Look at the kind of work you do. Look at the kind of life you live. And you are saying you helped us rise?" Vanessa took over again. "This is what happens when poor people dream too much. You start believing your own lies." "She has been watching too many rich people from a distance," Clara added. "Now she thinks she belongs among them." Lillian stood there and let them finish. Then she looked at Femi again. "I am serious." "And I am serious too," Femi replied. "Everything I have now came from my own intelligence, my hard work, and the help of the right people." He glanced at Vanessa. Vanessa smiled proudly. "Yes," she said, "the right people." Femi continued. "I worked for this. I earned this. I did not get here because of some secret help from you." Vanessa lifted her chin. "And let us say the truth clearly. That major project from Okoro Group, it came because of my connections." Lillian slowly turned her eyes to Vanessa. Vanessa gave her a mocking smile. "Did you think big men like Lawrence Okoro just wake up and remember people like Femi? Please. There are levels to this life. I spoke to the right people. I opened the right doors. That is why things are changing." Lillian said nothing. But inside her, something painful and clear was settling. It was true that Femi did not know she was from the Obiora family. It was true that he did not know the woman he had married came from one of the most powerful families in the country. But that was no longer what hurt most. What hurt was that he did not even know her heart. He did not know the way she had loved him. He did not know the kind of woman who had sat beside him in silence and in struggle. He did not know her as a person. And standing there in that room, Lillian finally understood that maybe he never had. Femi bent and picked up a brown envelope from the table. He pulled out the papers inside and stepped closer. "These are the divorce papers," he said. He placed them in front of her. Lillian looked down at them, then back up at him. He reached into his pocket and brought out a check. "There is money here," he said. "Take it and leave quietly." She did not touch it. "It should be enough to help you start something small," he added. "A food stall, maybe, or a small shop." Lillian kept looking at him. When she did not respond, he took another check from the envelope and placed it beside the first one. "This one is more," he said. "Use it to survive." Vanessa smiled like she was watching a show. Mrs. Margaret nodded approvingly. Still, Lillian did not touch the checks. Femi's face hardened a little. He brought out a third check. This one was bigger. "There," he said. "This should be enough for you to stop acting proud. Open a small food business, rent a place, start life somewhere else." Lillian looked at the 3 checks on the table. Then she looked at him. "So this is what 2 years of my life are worth to you?" Femi's expression did not change. "Take the money and move on." She gave a faint, painful smile. Then she picked up the pen. Vanessa straightened with satisfaction. Clara grinned. Mrs. Margaret relaxed into her chair. Lillian signed the divorce papers quietly. When she finished, she dropped the pen and pushed the papers back toward him. Then she stepped away from the table and looked at the checks once more. "I will not take 1 kobo from this house," she said. Mrs. Margaret's face darkened. "Don't pretend." Lillian shook her head. "I am leaving with nothing because I do not want to carry anything dirty from the Adeyemi family." That sentence changed the room. Mrs. Margaret stood up at once. "What did you say?" Vanessa gave a sharp laugh. "Dirty? Look at the one speaking." Then she leaned closer and said with open mockery, "Please leave before you start smelling up the room with all this fake pride. Femi's breakthrough came because of me, not because of one bitter cleaner who cannot even hold a man." That was the moment. Before anyone saw it coming, Lillian raised her hand and slapped Vanessa hard across the face. The sound cracked through the room. Everybody froze. Vanessa staggered back, one hand flying to her cheek. Mrs. Margaret gasped. Clara screamed. Femi took one quick step forward in shock. Vanessa stared at Lillian as if she could not believe what had just happened. "You slapped me?" she whispered. Lillian's eyes were bright with pain, but her voice was steady. "Yes," she said, "and if you lie again, I may do worse." Vanessa looked at Femi in outrage. "Did you hear what she said?" But Lillian did not let her speak again. "The breakthrough you are all celebrating," she said, looking from Vanessa to Femi. "The major Okoro deal you are using to insult me tonight. I arranged it." For half a second there was silence. Then the laughter started again. This time it was worse. Vanessa laughed until she had to hold her cheek and chest at the same time. Clara bent over with laughter. Mrs. Margaret shook her head in disgust. Even Femi gave her a look that was somewhere between anger and disbelief. "You arranged it?" Vanessa said. "You?" Lillian did not blink. Vanessa laughed again. "Do you even hear yourself? Do you know people like Lawrence Okoro?" Mrs. Margaret joined in. "She cannot even enter the kind of place where that contract will be signed." Clara added, "People like her stand outside and watch from far." Femi's face was cold again now. "Enough. Take your things and leave." Lillian turned slowly toward the small cake box she had brought in with Hope just minutes earlier. She looked at it for a second. Then she picked up only her handbag. Nothing else. Not the money. Not the cake. Not the life she had built in that house. When she reached the door, she stopped and looked back at them. Her eyes rested on Femi for one last moment. There was pain in them. Real pain. but her back was still straight. "You never knew me," she said quietly. Then she opened the door and walked out. No one followed her. No one called her back. And as Lillian stepped into the night, with heartbreak pressing hard against her chest, one thing was clear. She had entered that house hoping to finally tell the man she loved who she truly was. Instead, she was leaving knowing that the man she loved had never truly seen her at all. She had barely reached the gate when she heard Mrs. Margaret's voice behind her. "Stop there!" Lillian paused. She turned slowly and saw Mrs. Margaret hurrying after her, with Clara and Vanessa close behind. Femi came too, though not as fast. His face showed irritation more than concern. Mrs. Margaret's eyes fell on the handbag in Lillian's hand. "What is inside that bag?" she demanded. Lillian looked at her in disbelief. "My things." Mrs. Margaret gave a dry laugh. "Your things?" "Yes." "Open it." Lillian's face changed. "For what?" "So we can see what you are trying to steal before leaving my son's house." For 1 second, Lillian just stared at her. Then she said quietly, "I am not taking anything from this house." Vanessa folded her arms. "That is what all desperate women say when they have been caught." Clara stepped closer. "Mummy, let her open it. We cannot trust her." Lillian looked at Femi. "You too?" He looked away for a moment, then said, "Just open the bag and let the matter end." That hurt more than the insult itself. Mrs. Margaret stepped forward. "Open it or I will have them search you." Lillian's eyes widened. "Search me?" "Yes," Mrs. Margaret said without shame. "This family has suffered enough disgrace tonight. I will not allow you walk away with what does not belong to you." Vanessa gave a small laugh. "Who knows? Maybe she stuffed some jewelry into her clothes before coming outside." Clara nodded quickly. "Exactly. These poor people can act proud, but they know how to steal." Lillian gripped the bag tightly. "I said I took nothing. You have nothing of value for me to take." Mrs. Margaret turned toward the 2 female domestic staff near the side entrance. "Come here." The women rushed forward at once. "Search her bag," Mrs. Margaret said, "and if you do not find anything, search her body." Lillian stepped back as if something dirty had been thrown at her. "Don't touch me," she said. Mrs. Margaret's voice rose. "Then open the bag!" Lillian's chest rose and fell. She looked again at Femi, hoping that at least now he would stop this madness. But he only said, "Just let them check, then you can leave." At that moment, she understood something even deeper than she had before. The man she had just divorced was not only weak, he was cruel in a quiet way. Not because he shouted the loudest, but because he stood there and allowed evil when it was time to stop it. One of the women reached for Lillian's bag. Lillian pulled back sharply. Then a voice came from behind them. "No one will touch her." Everybody turned. A black car had just stopped outside the gate. The driver's door was still open. Standing beside the car was Lawrence Okoro. He was dressed simply in a dark suit, but there was nothing simple about the way he carried himself. His face was calm, but his eyes were hard. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then Clara spoke first, shocked. "Mr. Okoro?" Vanessa straightened at once and quickly fixed her expression. Femi's entire body stiffened, thinking the day must be a very lucky day to have Lawrence himself visit. He had probably come to personally congratulate her. Femi, she thought to herself. Mrs. Margaret, who was equally stunned, changed tone immediately. "Mr. Okoro, good evening. We did not know." Lawrence did not even look at her. His eyes were on Lillian. "Are you all right?" he asked. Lillian had not expected to see him there. Not that night. Not outside that gate. She gave a small nod, though her face still carried the pain of everything that had happened. Lawrence's gaze moved to the people around her. "What is going on here?" he asked. Nobody answered immediately. Then Vanessa stepped in with a sweet voice that sounded false from the first word. "It is just a family matter. She was leaving and—" "I did not ask you," Lawrence said. Vanessa went quiet at once. Lawrence looked at Femi. Femi swallowed. "She was leaving the house. My mother only wanted to make sure she was not taking anything that belonged to us." Lawrence stared at him for a long second. Then he looked at Lillian's small handbag. Then back at Femi. "This is what you stopped her for." Mrs. Margaret spoke quickly. "Mr. Okoro, you don't understand. These things happen during divorce. We must be careful."
Lawrence finally turned his eyes to her, and whatever she saw there made her stop. He took one slow step forward. "Careful?" he repeated. "You wanted to search her body in front of people like a common thief." Mrs. Margaret opened her mouth, but no words came out. Vanessa tried again. "Sir, it is not as bad as it sounds. She is emotional and—" Lawrence cut in coldly. "Enough." That one word fell heavily. He turned to Lillian. "Give me the bag." She hesitated, then handed it to him. Lawrence opened it himself. Inside were only small personal things: a scarf, a purse, a small notepad, a phone, nothing more. He closed the bag and handed it back to her. Then he faced the family again. "She took nothing," he said. Silence. "If any of you had touched her," he added, "you would have answered to me." Now the silence became deeper. Femi's pride was hurting already. Lillian could see it in the way he stood. Still, he tried to remain calm. "Mr. Okoro, I think this is being blown out of proportion." Lawrence looked at him with open dislike now. Earlier that evening, Grace had returned with everything he asked for. The cleaner who saved his company was Lillian Obiora. She was married to Femi Adeyemi. And more than that, he had learned something that had made his jaw go tight with anger. The same day Femi secured the project that could change his company's future, he divorced the woman who had asked for that project on his behalf. To Lawrence, that was the behavior of a man who used a ladder to climb and threw it away as soon as he reached the roof. And he hated such men. That was why he decided to see matters for himself. "You are right," Lawrence said. "This is not proportion, this is character." Femi's face darkened. "Sir, a man who forgets who stood by him when he had nothing is already poor, no matter what enters his account." Nobody said anything after that. Vanessa looked disturbed now. Mrs. Margaret's face had lost its earlier power. For the first time, all of them were beginning to feel that this woman they had just pushed out might not be as small as they thought. Lawrence turned to Lillian again. "Come," he said quietly. She did not argue. He walked with her out of the gate. The family watched them go. The road outside was quiet. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. Lillian still looked shaken, though she was trying hard not to show it too much. Lawrence slowed his steps and looked at her. "You should not have gone through that." A tired smile touched her lips, then vanished. "But I did." He wanted to say more, but he held it back. Instead, he asked, "Do you have somewhere to stay tonight?" "Yes." He studied her face, as if checking whether that was true. Then he nodded. When they reached his car, they stopped. Lawrence looked at her properly now. "Tomorrow evening is the contract signing event." Lillian's face changed a little. He continued, "You should be there." She said nothing. "That event is happening because of you," he said. "If you had not stepped into that room today, there would be nothing to sign. You are not going there as someone's ex-wife. You are going there as an honored guest." Lillian looked down for a moment. After everything that had happened that night, the thought of standing in a room full of those same people again felt exhausting. As if he sensed that, Lawrence added gently, "Do not let them make you disappear." She lifted her eyes to him. For the first time that day, someone was speaking to her as if her place in the room mattered. After a short silence, she nodded. "I will come." Lawrence gave a small nod in return. "Good." They stood there one more moment. Then Lillian stepped back. "Thank you." "For what?" "For coming when you did." Lawrence's eyes held hers. "You helped me first." She gave a faint, tired smile, then turned and walked away into the night. Lawrence stood there watching her until she disappeared from sight. Then he got into his car, but he did not move for a few seconds. There was something about her that kept pulling at his mind. Not just what she had done in the boardroom. Not just the quiet dignity she kept trying to hold together, even after being humiliated. Something deeper. And he knew one thing already. The story people thought they knew about Lillian Obiora was not the real one. There was more to her than was out there for people to see. The next evening, the event hall was bright with expensive lights, soft music, and rich voices. Important guests moved about with glasses in their hands. Company staff stood in neat lines. The contract documents rested at the front of the hall, ready for the formal signing between Okoro Group and Adeyemi Construction. Femi arrived in a dark suit with Vanessa on one side and his family close behind. Mrs. Margaret looked pleased with herself again, as if the shame of the previous night had already been washed away by luxury and hope.
This is the beginning of something bigger.
Vanessa smiled. Of course. Once this is signed, people will know there are new names to respect. Clara looked around the hall in admiration. Just look at this place. Then she froze. Mummy. Mrs. Margaret followed her eyes and stopped too. Femi turned. At the entrance stood Lillian. She was dressed simply but beautifully. No heavy jewelry, no loud makeup, no effort to compete with anybody. Just a soft dress, neat hair, and a quiet confidence that somehow made her stand out more than the women trying too hard. For a second, nobody near the door even remembered to move. Vanessa's face hardened first. What is she doing here? Mrs. Margaret clicked her tongue in disgust. So she really came. Clara hissed softly. She has no shame. Femi's expression darkened. I should have known. Lillian walked into the hall calmly. More than one guest turned to look at her. It unsettled the Adeyemi family immediately. In their minds, she should have been somewhere hidden, crying over the loss of a rich man like Femi. She should have looked broken. Instead, she looked calm. That irritated them more than tears would have. Mrs. Margaret picked up a glass of red wine from a passing tray and moved toward her. Vanessa smiled faintly, already guessing what was coming. Lillian saw her coming but did not step back. Mrs. Margaret stopped in front of her and gave a fake smile. I was just wondering, she said loudly enough for nearby people to hear, why this hall suddenly smells of poverty. Before Lillian could respond, Mrs. Margaret tilted the glass and poured the wine over the front of Lillian's dress. A sharp gasp rose around them. The red stain spread across the fabric. Mrs. Margaret smiled coldly. Now maybe the smell is covered. For 1 second the room held its breath. Then Lillian looked down at the stain. Very slowly she raised her eyes. Her face was calm, but there was steel in it now. She reached for another glass from a nearby tray. Vanessa stepped back a little. Lillian looked at Mrs. Margaret and said,
This wine is expensive. Your manners, however, are rotten.
Then, without warning, she let the wine in her own glass fall across Mrs. Margaret's front. Not wildly, not clumsily. Just enough. Mrs. Margaret gasped in outrage and jumped back. How dare you? The tension in the hall burst open. Clara rushed forward. Vanessa started shouting. A few guests gathered closer at once. Femi marched toward them.
You are so bitter. You're trying to destroy my day, aren't you?
Lillian faced him calmly.
Your day?
Yes, Femi said. This deal is the biggest thing that has happened to my company. You came here because you cannot accept losing me. Vanessa quickly stepped in.
This project happened because of me. You still have the strength to lie?
Vanessa lifted her chin. Lie? I am the reason your ex-husband is standing here tonight. Something in Lillian's face changed then. Not loss, not pain. Decision. At the front of the hall, the contract papers were already laid out neatly for signing. Without hurry, Lillian walked toward them. At first, nobody understood what she was about to do. Then she picked up the contract. Lillian! Femi barked. She looked at him once. This deal was a gift, she said clearly. A gift I asked for. But now that I have seen your true character, you do not deserve it. And before anyone could stop her, she tore the contract in half. The sound was small, but in that hall, it felt like thunder. Gasps broke out everywhere. Vanessa screamed. Clara covered her mouth. Mrs. Margaret looked ready to faint with anger. Femi stared at the torn pages in complete shock.
Are you mad?
No, I am awake.
At that moment, Grace, Lawrence's assistant, entered the hall with 2 staff members behind her. Vanessa rushed toward her at once. "Thank God you are here. This woman is causing trouble. She is a bitter ex-wife. She is mad. She came here to destroy the event." Mrs. Margaret joined in immediately. "She has been following my son everywhere since the divorce." Clara pointed at Lillian. "She tore the contract. She should be thrown out." Grace took in the scene, the torn papers, the wine stains, Lillian standing alone, and the panic around her. Before she could speak, another voice came from the entrance. "No one will throw her out." The hall fell silent again. Lawrence Okoro walked in. He did not look confused. He did not look surprised. He looked like a man who already knew enough. Vanessa's confidence dropped at once. Femi forced a smile that did not hold. "Mr. Okoro, there has been a misunderstanding." Lawrence did not even let him finish. "There is no misunderstanding," he said. Then he turned to the room and spoke clearly enough for all to hear. "The contract with Adeyemi Construction existed for one reason only. Lillian Obiora asked me to support them." The hall froze. Vanessa's face lost color. Mrs. Margaret took a small step back. Clara's mouth opened. Femi just stood there. Lawrence continued, "If not for her, there would have been no deal to sign tonight." Vanessa tried weakly, "Sir, I think maybe you were not told everything." Lawrence turned his eyes to her. "You should stop speaking now." She did. Femi found his voice at last. "Mr. Okoro, this is a family matter. Whatever happened between me and my ex-wife has nothing to do with business." Lawrence's expression hardened. "A man who abandons the woman who stood by him when he had nothing," he said, "does not deserve the favor she asked on his behalf." The words hit harder because they were calm. Femi's face flushed. "Sir, I can explain." "You already explained," Lawrence said, "with your actions." He looked at Grace. "Make it official. Okoro Group is withdrawing the contract." Grace nodded at once. "Yes, sir." Mrs. Margaret rushed forward. "Mr. Okoro, please." Lawrence's gaze stopped her. Vanessa looked like someone whose whole body had gone weak. Clara was nearly in tears. Femi stood still, but something inside him had cracked. Lawrence turned to the people who had insulted Lillian moments earlier. "You will apologize." Mrs. Margaret looked stunned. "What?" "You heard me." Vanessa tried to resist, but one look from Lawrence ended that quickly. One after another, under the eyes of the guests around them, apologies began to come. Mrs. Margaret's voice shook with humiliation. Clara could barely speak. Vanessa forced the words out like poison. Femi said nothing. Lawrence looked at him. "And you?" Femi's pride fought him, but the shame of the room was already closing in. At last, with a face full of bitterness, he said the words too. "I am sorry." Lillian stood there listening. After everything that had happened since the previous night, this was the first time truth had stood beside her in public instead of leaving her to fight alone. She did not smile. She did not gloat. But something inside her that had been bleeding quietly all day finally became still. For Femi, it was different. As he stood in that hall, with his mother humbled, Vanessa exposed, and the deal he had built his pride around torn away in front of everyone, he felt the first real crack in the image he had built for himself. And for the first time, he began to suspect that the woman he had thrown away might have been far more important than he ever understood. For a few moments after the forced apologies, nobody in the hall knew what to say. The shame was too fresh. Femi stood still like a man trying not to fall apart in public. Vanessa's face looked stiff and pale. Mrs. Margaret could not even raise her head well. Clara stayed close to her, frightened now instead of proud. Lillian did not look at any of them for long. She turned to Lawrence. "Thank you," she said quietly. Lawrence held her gaze for a moment. "You do not need to thank me for truth." She gave a small nod. Then, without another word to the Adeyemi family, she turned and walked out of the hall. This time, nobody stopped her. And this time, nobody dared. Outside, the night air felt cooler than before, but Lillian's chest was still warm with pain. Truth had stood up for her, yes. But truth did not remove heartbreak in 1 second. As she walked toward the driveway, a familiar black car rolled to a stop. The back door opened, and Uncle Joseph stepped out. He had clearly heard enough already, because when he looked at her face, his own expression changed. "You have been through a lot tonight," he said. Lillian let out a tired breath. "It is done now." Uncle Joseph studied her for a second. Not fully. She looked at him. He lowered his voice. "What do you want me to do?" For a brief moment, Lillian said nothing. Then her face became calm again in that quiet way Uncle Joseph knew very well. "It is time," she said. He waited. "Spread the word carefully," Lillian continued. "Let people begin to hear that the Obiora family is about to move openly again. Let them hear there will be a major business gathering soon." Uncle Joseph nodded slowly. "And after that," she said, "my succession ceremony will follow shortly." His eyes rested on her face. "You are ready?" Lillian looked back toward the building for 1 second, as if she could still see the shame and lies she had just walked away from. Then she faced him again. "Yes," she said. "But not all at once. I do not want noise before the right moment. Let matters unfold step by step." A small smile touched Uncle Joseph's lips. "That sounds more like the young madam I know." Lillian gave a faint smile too, but it did not stay long. "I am tired, Uncle Joseph." "I know." He opened the car door for her. "Come, let us get you somewhere safe tonight." Lillian got into the car. As the car drove away, she leaned her head back and closed her eyes for a moment. She had hidden for 2 years out of love. But something in her was changing now. Not into bitterness. Into clarity. The next morning, Lawrence was already in his office when Grace walked in with a file. "I have more information," she said. Lawrence looked up from his desk. "Go on." Grace handed him the file. "The woman's name is Lillian Obiora, but there is something else." Lawrence opened the file and read quickly. "She was seen leaving in a car registered to one of the top executives in the Obiora business empire," Grace said. "Not rented, not borrowed casually. It is a direct family-linked vehicle." Lawrence lifted his eyes. Grace continued, "And her surname is Obiora too." Lawrence leaned back in his chair. The Obiora family was one of those families people rarely saw too much of in public. They were known for wealth, discipline, and keeping their affairs private. They were not loud people, but everyone in serious business knew their weight. So why would a woman carrying that name be cleaning offices in his building? Why would she live like that? Why would she stay married to a man like Femi Adeyemi and hide her real life? Too many questions sat in front of him. But even with all that, one thing remained simple in his mind. Whatever her background was, whatever family stood behind her, the woman he found himself thinking about was Lillian herself. The woman in the cleaner's uniform. The woman who had stood alone in a room full of mockery and still held herself together. The woman who had saved his company with steady hands. He could not deny it anymore. He was drawn to her. Not a little. Deeply. Grace was still standing there. "Should I keep digging?" Lawrence closed the file. "Yes, but carefully." Then after a pause he added, "And Grace?" "Yes, sir." "No matter what you find, do not treat her differently because of a family name." Grace nodded. "I understand." After she left, Lawrence remained seated for a while, looking at nothing. He was still there when his office door opened again without warning. This time, the woman who entered did not wait to be announced. Bianca Uber walked in like someone who had never been told no in her life. She was beautiful, polished, and striking. Every movement carried pride. Every look carried possession. Bianca came from a wealthy family with strong business ties. For years, people had spoken of her and Lawrence as if their future marriage was already settled. Their families approved of it. Their world expected it. But Lawrence had never loved her. Not even once. Bianca stopped in front of his desk and smiled. "You did not answer my calls." Lawrence did not rise. "I was working." Bianca sat without being invited. "Good.
Then let us talk about something important. Lawrence already knew where the conversation was heading. Bianca crossed one leg over the other. It is time we stop delaying. Our families want this union. If we formalize the engagement now, both sides gain more power. It makes sense. Lawrence's face did not change. No. Bianca blinked once. No? I am not marrying you. The silence after that felt sharp. Bianca's smile slowly disappeared. Where is this coming from? It has always been the truth. She leaned back slightly, studying him more carefully now. There is someone else. Lawrence said nothing. Bianca's eyes narrowed. There is. Still he did not answer. That was enough for her. Who is she? Bianca asked. Lawrence stayed quiet for a few seconds. Then he said, That is not your business. Bianca laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Then it is serious. Her mind worked quickly. It did not take her long to hear whispers from recent events. By the time she spoke again, her face had changed. That divorced woman? She asked. That woman people were talking about yesterday. Lillian. Lawrence's eyes hardened. Bianca sat upright. You cannot be serious. He said nothing. Now her anger began to rise. A woman like that? Bianca said. A woman people have been mocking all over town. A woman who just left her husband's house? That is who is on your mind? Lawrence finally spoke. Be careful. Bianca let out a dry laugh. You want me to be careful because of her? Yes. That one word only made her angrier. Bianca stood up. Do you know what people will say? That you, Lawrence Okoro, pushed aside an alliance that would increase your power for one woman with a messy past. Lawrence's voice stayed calm. My life is not a project for people to discuss. Bianca stepped closer to his desk. If you keep protecting her, I will destroy her path before it begins. And if I have to touch your business to do it, I will. Lawrence rose to his feet then. He was taller than her, and when he spoke, his voice was low and dangerous. You can threaten me all you want, he said, but do not touch Lillian. Bianca held his gaze, breathing hard. Then she laughed softly again, but this time there was something dark inside it. So it is true, she said. You really care. She turned and walked to the door, then stopped. If you keep standing beside her, she said without looking back, you will both regret it. Then she left.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on your notifications so you'll be the first to know when part 2 drops very soon.
Lawrence stood still after she was gone. He did not like threats. But more than that, he did not like the thought of Bianca turning her attention toward Lillian. He picked up his phone.
Grace, I need Lillian's location for the day. Now.
That same evening, Lillian arrived at one of the most expensive hotels in the city. She stepped out of the car with calm steps. But she was not the only one arriving. Vanessa was smiling proudly. We are lucky, she said as they walked. Do you know what it means to even be considered by the Obiora family? Mrs. Margaret smiled widely. I knew you would not fail us. Clara added, First Okoro group, now Obiora family. This is real progress. Femi's face looked more controlled than before, but pride was still there. The shame from the contract event had not humbled him enough. Then Vanessa saw Lillian. She stopped at once. Mrs. Margaret followed her gaze and nearly hissed. This girl again? Clara rolled her eyes. Has she no shame at all? Femi's jaw tightened. Vanessa laughed softly. Of course, she followed us. Lillian looked at them but did not answer. Mrs. Margaret stepped forward.
Why are you here? Do you want Femi to change his mind?
Clara folded her arms. She is desperate. Vanessa tilted her head and smiled with poison in it. You should be in one corner mourning the rich man you lost, not running after him from place to place.
Stop this.
I did not come here for you.
They laughed.
Before another word could be said, the hotel entrance manager stepped out. He was a middle-aged man with a stiff manner and a sharp face. After hearing only part of the matter, he quickly picked a side. "What is going on here?" he asked. Vanessa answered first. "This woman has no business here. This hotel is clearly closed to ordinary guests tonight, but she followed us here." The manager looked at Lillian with instant contempt. "Madam, this hotel is not open to the public tonight. Important people are inside." Lillian reached into her bag and calmly brought out her invitation card. "This is mine," she said. The manager took it from her. He barely looked at it. Instead, with a dry smile, he tore it straight across the middle. Mrs. Margaret gasped, then laughed. Clara clapped a hand over her mouth in delight. Vanessa shook her head as if watching a fool expose herself. Lillian looked at the torn card in his hand. When she raised her eyes again, her voice was quiet.
You have just destroyed something far above your level.
The manager laughed. "Who do you think you are?" The others laughed too. Vanessa said, "Please stop acting. It does not fit you." Mrs. Margaret looked Lillian over with fresh disgust. With a face like this, she probably fooled one old man somewhere and came to disturb people here. Clara nodded quickly. Yes, she always acts innocent. Femi did not laugh this time, but he did not defend her either. Lillian simply took out her phone and called Uncle Joseph. When he answered, she spoke only one sentence. "I have been insulted at the hotel entrance." Then she ended the call. She looked at the manager. "You have 3 minutes." The manager laughed harder. 3 minutes for what? Lillian said nothing. The Adiemi family thought she was bluffing again. Vanessa leaned close to Femi and whispered loudly enough for Lillian to hear, "She is trying too hard." 1 minute passed. Then 2. By the middle of the 3rd minute, footsteps came rushing from inside. A well-dressed man ran toward the entrance with 2 senior staff behind him. This was the hotel's general manager. The moment he saw Lillian, his face lost all color. Then, to the shock of everybody standing there, he rushed forward and dropped to his knees before her. "First, young madam," he said breathlessly, bowing his head, "please forgive us." Everything went still. The manager who had torn the card nearly dropped where he stood. Mrs. Margaret's mouth opened. Clara looked from one face to another like she had stopped understanding the world. Vanessa's confident smile disappeared completely. Even Femi's eyes changed. The general manager remained on his knees. "I am deeply sorry. I was informed too late. This should never have happened." Lillian looked down at him calmly. "Your entrance manager tore my invitation card." The general manager turned sharply to the man and looked as if he wanted to collapse from rage. The smaller manager began to stammer. "Sir, I did not know." "You ruined your own career," the general manager snapped. Then he faced Lillian again and bowed lower. "First, young madam, I beg you, please forgive this disgrace." Those words settled over the others like heavy dust. First, young madam. Not cleaner. Not abandoned wife. Not desperate woman. First, young madam. The same woman they had mocked a minute ago. Mrs. Margaret recovered first, but only partly. Her voice shook with forced confidence. "This must be some kind of mistake." Vanessa spoke next, though more weakly than before. "Or maybe she borrowed somebody's connection again." Clara nodded too quickly. "Yes, that must be it." Mrs. Margaret lowered her voice and muttered bitterly, "With that innocent face, she may have trapped one old rich man somewhere." Femi said nothing, but Lillian saw the fear beginning to enter his eyes. Not full fear. Not yet. But enough. Enough for him to know that he had stepped on something he did not understand. Enough for him to begin to wonder who this woman really was. The general manager rose and stepped aside respectfully. "Please, first young madam," he said. "They are waiting for you upstairs." Lillian did not look at the Adeyemi family again. She walked past them and entered the hotel. And as the doors closed behind her, the people who had spent days insulting her stood frozen at the entrance, holding the first real taste of a truth they were not ready for. The seed of fear had entered their hearts, and this time it would not leave easily.
The hotel doors closed behind Lillian, but the shock on the faces outside stayed with her. A staff member led her to the private lift. Nobody spoke on the way up. When the lift opened, 4 elderly men were already waiting in a quiet lounge on the top floor. These were men Lillian had known since she was a girl. Chief Benson Obi, a careful old businessman with a deep voice and sharp eyes. Chief Peter Dyke, a large-hearted man who always spoke plainly. Chief Gabriel Eze, calm and observant, the kind of man who noticed everything before others did. And Chief Tunde Balagun, who rarely smiled in business matters but had always treated Lillian like a daughter. The moment they saw her, their faces softened. "Lillian," Chief Benson said, opening his arms. She walked to them, and each of them welcomed her warmly. "We missed you," Chief Peter said. "You vanished on us," Chief Gabriel added, though there was affection in his voice. Chief Tunde looked at her closely. "You have lost peace in your face." That one touched her. They all sat down, and for a few moments nobody rushed her. They let her breathe first. Then Chief Benson asked the question quietly. "How has your marriage truly been?" That was all it took. Lillian did not cry. She was already past the point of easy tears, but she told them everything. She told them how she had left the comfort of her family because she loved Femi and wanted a normal life. How she had hidden her identity. How she had spent 2 years living as an ordinary woman. How she had worked as a cleaner without shame because she wanted to stand beside the man she loved, not above him. How she had quietly helped Femi's family from the shadows again and again. How she had asked Lawrence Okoro to support Adeyemi construction. How the same day the breakthrough came, Femi had divorced her. How Vanessa mocked her. How Mrs. Margaret treated her like dirt. How she was insulted, searched, and dragged through shame by the very people she had helped. By the time she finished, the room was silent. But it was not empty silence. It was anger. Chief Peter was the first to speak.
"That boy is a fool. Femi, you are blind to the consequences of your actions."
After everything, this is how he repays you?
He stopped and shook his head.
The question is, should Adeyemi construction remain part of the expansion?
No.
Her voice was calm.
The Adeyemi family is not worthy.
All 4 men nodded. Chief Gabriel asked,
So, who should take the place of the Adeyemis?
Lillian was quiet for a moment. Then she said,
Lawrence Okoro.
"He is capable," she said. "He is disciplined. He thinks before he moves, and when truth stood alone, he stood beside it." Chief Peter smiled faintly. "So you noticed that too?" Chief Benson nodded slowly. "That is a serious name." "It is a worthy one," Lillian replied. Chief Tunde studied her face carefully, but he said nothing. The meeting ended not long after that. When Lillian rose to leave, she felt lighter than when she came in. Not happy, not healed, but steadier. For the first time in a long while, she had spoken the truth before people who saw her clearly. A few days later, the Obiora family event finally arrived. It was bigger than the hotel meeting and far more public, though still controlled. Outside the grand venue, expensive cars lined the road. Femi arrived with Vanessa, Mrs. Margaret, and Clara, all dressed with fresh confidence. Vanessa walked as if the whole night had already bowed to her. "I told you," she said proudly, "this is bigger than Okoro Group. Once we step into the Obiora circle, everything changes." Mrs. Margaret smiled with satisfaction. "That Lawrence Okoro thinks he can block us. Let him watch." Clara laughed. "Once we enter here, people will know our level." Femi said little, but his silence carried pride. They reached the entrance and handed over their invitation cards. The staff checked once, then checked again. Then their expressions changed. "Your invitations have been invalidated," one of the attendants said. Vanessa frowned. "What?" The man kept his voice polite. "I am sorry, these are no longer active." Mrs. Margaret stepped forward. "Do you know who we are?" The attendant did not move. I only know what is on the system, madam. Clara's face fell. This is impossible. Vanessa snatched the cards and looked at them again as if they would change by force. Guests nearby had already begun to glance in their direction. Femi's face darkened with shame. Then another car stopped. The door opened. Lillian stepped out. She was dressed simply again, but there was something deeper in the way she carried herself now. She looked calm, settled, almost untouchable. The attendant at the premium entrance saw her at once and bowed slightly. "Good evening, ma'am." Lillian handed over a different card. This one was not ordinary. It was a dark premium invitation, the kind only a few people received, the kind reserved for names that did not need introduction. At once, the gates opened. A different staff member stepped forward respectfully. "Please come in, ma'am." Mrs. Margaret's mouth went dry. Clara looked ready to faint. Vanessa stared hard but said nothing. Femi stood still. Around them some guests were already whispering. That was no borrowed pass. That was no pity invitation. That was the kind of access people only got when they belonged near the center of power. And for the first time, more than one person in that crowd began to suspect that Lillian was not merely connected to powerful people. She might actually be one of them. Lillian walked inside without looking back. At the main hall, she found the front row and took her seat calmly. It was the kind of seat reserved for the most honored people of the night. Many guests noticed at once. So did Bianca Uba. Bianca had entered earlier with the careless confidence of a woman who thought the room would bend around her. The moment she saw Lillian in that seat, her face tightened. She walked over at once with two wealthy men and a woman behind her. One of the men spoke first. "Excuse me, that seat is not for you." Lillian looked up calmly. "Is that so?" "It is," Bianca said. "Stand up." Lillian did not move. Bianca's voice sharpened. "You have embarrassed yourself enough already. Do not add shamelessness to it." One of the men laughed. "These days, some people only need one rich person to pity them before they forget where they came from." Before Lillian could speak, another voice came in. "She is staying there." It was Lawrence. He stepped to her side and stood there without hesitation. Bianca looked from him to Lillian and back again. "So you came with her?" Lawrence said calmly, "I came because I was invited. I stayed because I chose to." Bianca laughed once bitterly. "You keep doing this for her as if she is worth a war." Lawrence's face did not change. "Be careful." But Bianca was already too angry to stop. She turned to the people around them. "Everyone should hear this clearly. If Lawrence Okoro insists on placing this woman above sense, I will use my family's money to crush Okoro Group in 5 minutes." A murmur spread through the hall. Lawrence's eyes hardened, but Lillian remained calm. She looked at Bianca and said quietly, "Do it." Bianca blinked. "What?" Lillian leaned back in her chair. "Do it. Let everyone here see whether your power is truly what you claim." That only pushed Bianca further. She took out her phone at once, stepped aside, and made the call. Orders moved fast through her family network. Traders, brokers, and business allies began to push against Okoro Group. Within minutes, some people in the hall began checking their phones. Everybody waited. Lawrence's face remained unreadable, but what Bianca did not know was that Lillian had already moved too. With one quiet phone call and 2 short messages, she shifted private funds she controlled, gave sharp instructions, and blocked the attack before it could bite. The same calm mind that had saved Lawrence's company before was working again. Time passed. 1 minute. 3. 5. Nothing happened. Okoro Group remained steady, then steadier still. No collapse. No panic. No fall. Bianca checked her phone again and again, but the results stayed the same. Lillian looked at her. 5 minutes have passed, she said. You promised too much. Kneel and apologize. The room went still. Bianca's face had lost color. She did not kneel. But fear had already entered her, and everyone could see it. Lillian was no longer being seen as merely a woman Lawrence was protecting. She was beginning to look like a force by herself. Just when that feeling began spreading fully through the hall, a senior staff member from the Obiora business side rushed over. He was a proud man in a fitted suit, and his face carried too much confidence. He pointed at Lillian and said loudly, "This is nonsense. She cannot be first young madam. I have worked within the Obiora business circle for years, and I have never seen her before." Bianca turned at once. Vanessa, who had slipped into the hall earlier through Bianca's side access, lit up with fresh hope. "There," Vanessa said loudly. "What did I say? She has been exposed." Bianca stepped forward. "Exactly. Everyone can finally see it now. She's a fraud." A few people began murmuring again. The staff member puffed out his chest. "This seat should be cleared." But before the confusion could grow, the doors at the side of the hall opened. Uncle Joseph walked in. Security followed behind him. The atmosphere changed immediately. He walked straight to Lillian, bowed respectfully, and said in a clear voice, "First young madam." The hall fell silent. Then Uncle Joseph turned to the staff member and his face became hard. "You," he said, "are too small to know every person your masters honor. Your ignorance is not proof, it is only ignorance." The man went pale. Uncle Joseph did not stop. "You overstepped your place. From this moment, you no longer work under any Obiora company." The man shook. "Sir." "Take him out." Security moved at once. The man tried to speak again, but he was dragged out before he could form a full sentence. The room shook with whispers. Vanessa's face changed again. Bianca was breathing harder now, but pride still held her up. She laughed sharply and said, "Anyone can act. Anyone can lie. One old man greeting her does not prove anything." Then she went further. "For all we know, she may have seduced him into helping her." Lawrence's eyes flashed, but before he spoke, the main doors opened again. The 4 elder businessmen from the hotel entered together. Chief Benson, Chief Peter, Chief Gabriel, Chief Tunde. Their presence changed the whole hall. People stood up at once. Those men did not waste time. They walked straight to Lillian and greeted her openly with respect. Chief Benson turned and faced the room. "Whoever insulted her insulted this family." Chief Peter pointed toward Vanessa first. "You, step forward." Vanessa's legs almost gave way. Then Bianca. Then the others who had spoken carelessly. One after another, powerful guests who had mocked Lillian were forced to kneel and apologize. Vanessa's voice shook so badly that people could barely hear her. Chief Gabriel looked at her coldly. "If you speak against her one more time, I will see to it that your family does not survive it." Vanessa nearly collapsed. Still, not everyone gave up. A wealthy older guest lifted his voice carefully. "Respectfully, elders, there is still the matter of the official symbol of succession in the Obiora family. If she is truly who you say she is, where is the proof?" That question kept the tension alive. Bianca quickly held on to it. "Yes," she said. "Exactly. All this noise and greeting still does not change one thing. She is only strong because the Obiora family is backing her." Lillian slowly stood. Then she spoke. "Very well." The room quieted again. "I will not use one kobo of Obiora family money," she said. Bianca gave a small, bitter smile. "Good." Lillian turned to Lawrence. "Do you trust me?" Lawrence did not hesitate. "Yes." She held out her hand. "Your phone." He gave it to her. In front of the room, Lillian made 2 short calls, sent instructions through Lawrence's trading channels, and redirected pressure toward Bianca's family company with a clean, sharp strategy. No noise. No drama. Just clear moves. Within minutes, phones began vibrating across the hall. Bianca checked hers first. Her face drained. Then her own father called. She answered with shaking fingers. "What did you do?" he shouted so loudly that even people nearby heard. "Our stock is dropping. Investors are pulling out. What have you done?" Bianca tried to speak, but her mouth had gone dry. "This is your fault," her father shouted again. "You have brought trouble to this house." The call ended. Bianca stared at the phone in disbelief. Now there was no hiding it. Lillian was not just powerful because of family blood. She was powerful because she knew exactly what she was doing. A real business queen. Fear spread through the room. Some of the same wealthy people who had mocked her before now stepped forward with trembling voices. Please, show mercy. We spoke out of turn. Do not destroy us. They expected revenge. They expected her to finish them. But Lillian looked around the room and said calmly, one company should not swallow everything. One family should not destroy all others. Business is not healthy that way. A country grows when there is room for many people to build, compete, and rise. If everybody keeps fighting to bury one another, nobody truly wins. The room went silent again. This time, with respect. Her mercy made her look bigger than punishment would have. At the end of the gathering, Chief Benson stepped forward and spoke on behalf of the elders. For the Obiora family's new expansion, he said, we believe Okoro Group is the most suitable primary partner. There was no resistance left. Lawrence's company rose even higher that night. And outside the main hall, where Femi, Mrs. Margaret, and Clara had been forced to watch much of the event from the outer reception screens, silence sat heavily on them. They watched Lillian stand in a kind of power they had once laughed at. A power too calm to beg, too high to chase them, too real to deny. And for the first time, they understood something painful. They had not only lost a woman, they had thrown away a world they could never reach. After the Obiora event, the whole city changed the way it spoke Lillian's name. Some people still whispered. Some still doubted. But nobody laughed as freely as before. The ones who had mocked her now spoke carefully, as if her name might open or close doors. Lillian did not chase any of that noise. She stayed quiet. She met the elders when necessary. She answered Uncle Joseph when he called, and when she was alone, she tried to settle her own heart. But one thing had changed clearly. Whenever she thought of Lawrence Okoro, her chest no longer stayed still. She respected him. She trusted him. And though she tried not to dwell on it too much, she knew his kindness had entered a place inside her that Femi's pride had only wounded. A few days later, she went to the biggest luxury mall in the city to choose a dress for the welcoming banquet and succession event. She wore a simple outfit and dark glasses, hoping to shop quietly. But peace did not last long. She had just stepped out of one luxury store with 2 attendants following behind her when she heard a familiar voice. Lillian. She turned. Vanessa, Mrs. Margaret, and Clara were walking toward her. For 1 second, Lillian almost laughed at the sight. They looked softer than before. Careful. Almost humble. Vanessa gave a smile that did not reach her eyes. We were hoping to see you. Mrs. Margaret forced a warm tone. My daughter, let us not continue all this bitterness. Clara nodded quickly. Yes, we are all women. There is no need for too much hatred. Lillian looked at each of them and said nothing. She could see through them too easily now. Their faces had changed, but their hearts had not. They were not sorry for how they treated her. They were only adjusting themselves to the price they now thought she carried. Mrs. Margaret stepped closer. What happened before? Let us leave it behind. Vanessa added, we may have misunderstood some things. Lillian's expression did not change. She simply turned and continued walking. That was all it took. Vanessa's fake softness vanished first. Look at her, she snapped. She is acting as if she is too big to answer. Clara's face changed too. She was waiting for us to beg her. Mrs. Margaret's mouth hardened. This is why some people should never taste power. Lillian stopped and turned back slowly. Vanessa folded her arms. Let us say it plainly. So what if you have money now? You think that makes you better than us? Mrs. Margaret looked around the store and said loudly, people like you do not belong in places like this. Clara added, wearing luxury will not change where you came from. Vanessa stepped forward. Exactly. Expensive clothes do not make a woman classy. You are still the same person underneath. Lillian held her gaze. Then she said calmly, money does not make me better than you.
character does. That is why even with all this noise you still look small." Their faces changed at once. Vanessa opened her mouth to answer, but another voice came first. "And that is the kindest thing anyone could say to you today." They all turned. Lawrence was walking toward them. He looked from one face to another and did not bother hiding his disgust. Mrs. Margaret tried to recover first. "Mr. Okoro, You were only doing what you know best," Lawrence said coldly. "Following her around to insult her." Vanessa forced a smile. "You are misunderstanding." "No," Lawrence replied. "I understand you very well." Clara took a step back. Lawrence moved to Lillian's side without hesitation. Then he looked at the store manager, who had already rushed over after noticing the tension. "This brand," Lawrence said. "How many stores do you have in this city?" The manager blinked. "Sir? How many?" "6, sir." Lawrence took out a card and handed it to him. "Call your head office. I'm buying all of them." The manager froze. Vanessa stared. Mrs. Margaret's mouth opened. Clara looked from Lawrence to Lillian and back again. Lawrence's voice remained calm. "All 6 outlets. Today." The manager took the card with shaking hands. "Sir, all 6? "Yes." Vanessa laughed in disbelief. "You cannot be serious." Lawrence turned to her. "I usually am." Then he looked at the manager again. "And when the papers are ready, they will be transferred in her name." He nodded toward Lillian. The manager almost bowed. "Yes, sir. I will contact them now." Silence fell around them. Even Lillian had not expected that. She looked at Lawrence. "You do not need to do this." He met her eyes. "I know." There was something quiet in the way he said it that touched her more than the act itself. It was not noise. Not the proud kind of giving some men used to show power. It was simple, protective, steady. And in that moment, standing beside him in the bright mall, Lillian felt the difference sharply. Femi had always wanted to be seen. Lawrence wanted her protected. That difference entered her heart and stayed there. Vanessa's face was burning now. "This is madness." Lawrence looked at her and said, "No. Madness is thinking you still have the right to speak to her this way." He turned to Lillian. "Did you get what you came for?" She gave a small nod. "Good," he said. "Then let us leave them with their shame." He offered his arm lightly, not forcing, just there. After one small pause, Lillian placed her hand on it. They walked away together. Vanessa stood where she was, speechless with fury. Mrs. Margaret's whole body shook with frustration. Clara whispered, "Mummy." None of them had words strong enough for what they were feeling. By the time Lillian and Lawrence were gone, the store staff were looking at the 3 women differently too. Not with respect, with caution. And that only made the shame worse. Later, after she and Lawrence parted outside the mall, Lillian got into her car and sat quietly for a moment. Her fingers rested on her phone, but her mind was still on him. On the way he had spoken for her. On how safe she had suddenly felt. On how her heart had responded before her mind could stop it. She let out a slow breath, then made a call. The person on the other end answered quickly. "Yes, ma'am." "It's me," Lillian said. "The 3 women who just caused trouble at the luxury wing." "Yes, ma'am." "Throw them out of the mall. Ban them completely." There was no hesitation. "At once, ma'am." Lillian ended the call and leaned back. For once, she did not feel guilty. 10 minutes later, Vanessa was still ranting in the store when mall security arrived. "Madam," one of them said politely, "you and your party have been asked to leave." Vanessa laughed. "By who?" "You are no longer allowed in this mall." Mrs. Margaret stepped forward. "Do you know who I am?" The officer's face did not change. "You are no longer allowed in this mall, madam." Clara's face turned pale. "What?" Vanessa's voice rose. "I am a VIP member here." The officer nodded once. "Not anymore." Vanessa looked ready to explode. "Who is high enough to do this to me?" But no answer came. Security only moved closer. And for the second time in recent days, she was pushed out of a place she had thought would bend to her. Outside, she was still shouting when the doors closed behind them. Inside the mall, life moved on as if they had never been there. But while one storm was fading, another was rising quietly. In the Obiora family, not everyone was happy about Lillian's return. Among those smiling publicly and greeting her politely was a younger cousin named Sonia Obiora. Sonia was beautiful, clever, and always neat in the way she carried herself. She spoke sweetly when people were watching. She knew how to bow, how to greet, how to sound loyal. But inside her, jealousy had grown for years. She believed Lillian was too soft, too simple, too emotional, too willing to believe in love and goodness. In Sonia's mind, a family head should be sharp, hard, and impossible to embarrass. And more than anything, she believed that if somebody like Lillian could inherit all that power and wealth, then someone like her deserved it more. So when she saw Bianca disgraced and angry after the last gathering, she saw opportunity. She arranged to meet Bianca in private. Bianca arrived bitter and restless. Sonia did not waste time. "You want revenge," she said. Bianca laughed dryly. "Who said that?" "You do not have to say it. It is already written on your face." Bianca said nothing. Sonia leaned back. "I want the same thing you want. Lillian out of the way." Bianca's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because once she is gone," Sonia said quietly, "the succession path clears." That caught Bianca's full attention. Sonia went on, "Help me remove her before the official ceremony. In return, I will make sure you are compensated in ways that matter." Bianca looked at her for a long moment. Then she smiled slowly. She had lost too much already. She had nothing left to protect. "Fine," she said. "Tell me the plan." The trap was set quickly. That evening, Lawrence received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was low and urgent. "If you care about Lillian, come alone. She is in danger." The call ended before he could ask another question. Lawrence did not hesitate. He got into his car and drove straight to the location sent to his phone. It was an old, unfinished building at the edge of a quiet area. Dark. Half empty. Too still. The moment he stepped inside, he knew something was wrong. Lillian was not there. Instead, heavy footsteps moved behind him. Before he could fully turn, men came from both sides. One grabbed him, another blocked the exit. Lawrence fought hard, but there were too many of them. He was shoved against a pillar and held there. Then Bianca stepped out of the shadows. Her face was twisted with satisfaction. "You came faster than I thought," she said. Lawrence's eyes hardened. "Where is Lillian?" Bianca smiled. "So worried." A second voice came from the dark. "That is because he really cares." Sonia stepped forward. Lawrence recognized her at once from the family events. "You," he said. Sonia smiled lightly. "Yes, me." Then another voice came from behind them. "And me." Both women turned sharply. Lillian walked in. Alive, calm, unshaken. Bianca's eyes widened. Sonia's face changed for the first time. Lillian looked from them to Lawrence, who was being held. "I knew something was wrong the moment that call went out," she said. "So I made my own arrangements before coming." She had. Long before stepping in, she had already placed security around the area, hidden recorders, and informed trusted men to move only when she gave the signal. She had suspected Sonia for days. Bianca had only made the trap easier to see. Sonia recovered first. "You think you are clever." Lillian faced her. "Clever enough not to die for your ambition." Bianca took a step back. "This was not how it was supposed to happen." Sonia's face twisted. "Then finish it." That was the point where fear broke Bianca's pride. "No!" she shouted suddenly. "This was your plan. Yours!" Sonia turned on her. "Shut up!" But Bianca was already collapsing under pressure. "She is the one who approached me," Bianca cried. "She said if Lillian dies or disappears, the succession will clear for her. She said once Lillian was gone, she would take over the family and make sure everything fell into place." Sonia stared at her in cold fury. Lillian said nothing. She only watched. Bianca went on, almost breathless now. She told me to help ruin Lillian, to help remove her. She said no one would trace it back if we acted fast. That was enough. Lillian raised one hand. At once, security rushed in from different corners. The men holding Lawrence released him immediately and tried to run, but they were overpowered. Bianca dropped to her knees in panic. Sonia looked around once, judged the situation, and did the only thing left to her. She ran. "Catch her!" one of the men shouted. But Sonia moved fast and disappeared through the back before anyone could stop her. Bianca began crying. Lillian looked at her quietly. "Please," Bianca said. "Please don't kill me." Lillian's face did not change. "Your life is not mine to take." She turned to the security men. "Take her away. She will answer for what she has done." Bianca was dragged away, still begging. Soon the building was quiet again. Only Lillian and Lawrence remained standing there with two guards at a respectful distance. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lawrence stepped closer. "You came for me." Lillian looked at him. "Of course I did. You could have stayed away and let security handle it." Her voice softened. "No." That simple answer stayed between them. Lawrence's eyes searched her face. "You planned ahead." "I had to." He gave a short laugh, full of relief more than humor. "You keep surprising me." Lillian looked at him properly then. The night around them had become quiet again. The danger had passed. And now that they were standing alone in the silence after it, neither of them could fully hide what was there anymore. Lawrence spoke first. "I do not know when exactly it happened," he said, "but somewhere between that boardroom and now, you stopped being just somebody I admired." Lillian's heartbeat changed. He went on quietly. "I think about you too much. I worry about you too easily. And when I thought you were in danger tonight, I did not stop to think. I just came." Lillian looked down for a second, then back at him. "You are not the only one," she said softly. That was all he needed to hear. He lifted one hand slowly and touched her face lightly. Lillian did not pull away. For one breathless moment, the distance between them disappeared. They leaned in. Not fully, not yet, but close enough to feel the warmth of the moment. Then both of them paused at the same time. Lillian stepped back first, shy all of a sudden. Lawrence let out a breath and looked away for a moment. The air between them had changed completely. Lillian's cheeks were warm now. "I should go," she said quietly. Lawrence nodded, though he did not look pleased about the distance. "Yes?" She gave him one small, shy glance, then turned and walked to the waiting car. As she left, a smile she could not control touched her lips. For the first time in a long time, it was not a painful one. The welcoming banquet and succession event arrived soon after. The hall was grand, full, and loud with expectation. Sonia had not been seen publicly since the failed trap, and that had made people talk even more. But before the truth could settle, she walked onto the stage herself. Dressed beautifully and carrying false confidence, she smiled at the room as though nothing had happened. Some of the guests looked confused. Others leaned forward. Sonia lifted the microphone and began speaking like someone already in control. She suggested that Lillian was absent because she was not fit to lead. She hinted that difficult truths would soon become clear. She spoke as though the family needed strong hands and not soft hearts. Among the guests were Femi, Vanessa, Mrs. Margaret, and Clara. They had come hoping Sonia would rise and remember who stood with her. If she won, maybe doors would open for them again. If Lillian fell, maybe they could still escape shame. Sonia kept talking, trying to force the room into accepting her confidence. Then the hall doors opened. An older man walked in. Tall, controlled, distinguished. The room fell into shocked silence. It was Lillian's father. He had just returned from the United States. Sonia's words died in her throat. She had not expected him. And as she stood there trying to recover, another movement came from the entrance. Everyone turned. Lillian walked in. Alive. Unharmed.
dressed in luxury so effortless and natural that the whole room seemed to pause around her. Sonia's face drained at once. Because earlier that evening she had received a call confirming that Lillian had been taken care of. Now she understood. That too had been part of Lillian's plan. The trap had never been for Lillian. It had been for her. And as Lillian stepped fully into the light, the entire hall understood that whatever game Sonia thought she had been playing, she had already lost. Her face was still frozen when Lillian stopped in the middle of the hall. The whole room had gone silent. Lillian's father stood near the entrance, tall and still, with the kind of presence that made people straighten without thinking. Beside him stood some of the family elders and a few men from the inner circle of the Obiora Empire. Their arrival alone had already changed the air in the room. But it was Lillian's entrance that finished it. She walked in with quiet grace, dressed in rich gold and deep wine tones, simple but breathtaking. There was no fear on her face, no confusion, no sign of the danger Sonia thought she had arranged for her. Sonia looked at her like she had seen a ghost. For 1 second she truly could not speak. Then, because pride was the only thing still holding her up, she lifted her chin and forced words out. "This changes nothing," she said, though her voice was not as steady as before. "Being an heir is more than showing up. It is more than blood, more than a ring, more than a family name. Leadership is not something you wear like jewelry." A few heads turned. Sonia grabbed hold of that small opening and pushed harder. "People are standing here dazzled by appearance," she said. "But being born into a family does not automatically make somebody fit to lead it. A symbol is not enough. Blood is not enough. A title is not enough." She looked around the room as if she still had control. "It takes strength," she said. "It takes sharpness. It takes—" The slap landed before she finished. The sound cracked across the hall. Sonia staggered sideways and held her face. The room went still again. Lillian's father stepped forward, his face dark with anger. "You ungrateful girl," he said. Sonia looked up at him in shock, one hand still on her cheek. He did not lower his voice. "I paid your school fees," he said. "I fed you. I covered your needs when others would have turned away. This family carried you, protected you, and gave you a place to stand. And now, because of that kindness, you started to believe you could take what was never yours." Sonia's lips parted, but no words came. "You mistook mercy for weakness," he said. "You mistook help for permission." His voice dropped, but somehow it felt even heavier. "You are standing here talking about worthiness after plotting against the daughter of this house." The room stirred. Sonia quickly shook her head. "That is not true." But Lillian was already moving. She had come prepared. She gave one signal, and a large screen behind the stage came alive. At first it showed nothing but a dark room. Then voices began to play. Sonia's voice, Bianca's voice. Clear, sharp, impossible to deny. The room listened as Sonia spoke of removing Lillian before the succession. As Bianca, under pressure, confessed that Sonia had approached her first. As details of the trap, the plan, and the hope of taking over the family after Lillian disappeared came out one after another. Faces changed across the hall. Shock, disgust, unbelief. Sonia's knees almost buckled. "That is edited!" she cried. "It is not complete!" But then another recording played. This time it was from one of the men she sent. Then messages followed on screen. Arrangements. Payments. Orders. And finally the call record showing the false report that Lillian had been taken care of. The truth stood naked in front of everybody. No more room to twist anything. No more room to hide behind confidence. Sonia was exposed not just as jealous, but as dangerous. And worse than that, unworthy. She looked around wildly, but there was no face left in the room ready to save her. Then security moved in. Sonia turned quickly. "No, you cannot do this to me." But nobody answered her. The same girl who had tried to take the stage by force was now standing in the full light of her own greed, and the weight of it was crushing her. Lillian's father did not even look at her again. He turned to the room and said, "From this day, Let nobody ever question where this family stands. Then he walked to Lillian. The elders followed. One after another, the respected men of the Obiora circle and their allied business leaders publicly acknowledged her, not in secret, not with whispers, openly, clearly, with pride. Her father looked at her with eyes that had softened at last. "You were tested before the crown," he said, "and you did not break." The hall rose. Not all at once, but enough. Enough for the sound of respect to spread through the room like a tide. Some bowed their heads. Some clapped. Some stood quietly, knowing they were witnessing the full turning of a story they had mocked only days before. Major gifts were announced. Words of loyalty followed. Powerful families stepped forward one after another, offering support, respect, partnership, and congratulations. The same world that once saw Lillian as a cleaner and divorcee now rose to honor her as the woman who would lead one of the most powerful families in the country. And through it all, Lawrence stood nearby, not pushing himself forward, not claiming anything, just there, calm, watchful. The one man in that room who had truly seen her before the title, before the luxury, and before the applause. He had seen her in a cleaner's uniform, under pressure, with steady hands and a brave heart. And Lillian knew it. Across the hall, Femi stood with his family, but they no longer looked like people expecting favor. They looked like people watching a door close forever. As the truth settled fully, something inside Femi seemed to fall apart. Now he understood everything, not just one piece. Everything. He understood that the Adeyemi family had only risen because Lillian had quietly supported them. He understood that the Okoro contract had been her birthday gift to him. He understood that Vanessa had lied again and again. And worst of all, he understood that every single time Lillian spoke truth, he had chosen pride over faith. He moved before anybody could stop him. He walked toward Lillian, ignoring the stares around him, and dropped to his knees. The room reacted at once. Mrs. Margaret gasped. Clara burst into tears. Vanessa looked terrified. Femi raised his eyes to Lillian, and for the first time in a long time, he did not look proud. He looked broken. "Lillian," he said hoarsely, "please, forgive me." No one spoke. He went on, voice shaking now. "I was blind. I was foolish. I did not know. I did not understand anything. Please, just give me one more chance." Lillian looked down at him quietly. He kept talking. "I know now. I know what you did for me. I know what you sacrificed. I know everything Vanessa said was false. I know I failed you, but please, please let me make it right." Then, because he was still Femi, he reached for the easiest escape. He pointed toward Vanessa. "She poisoned everything," he said. "She lied to me. She pushed us apart. She—" "Stop." Lillian's voice was not loud, but it cut through him at once. Vanessa froze. So did everybody else. Lillian looked at Femi steadily. "Vanessa did not force you to insult me," she said. "She did not force you to betray me. She did not force you to divorce me. She did not force you to call me nothing after all I did for you." Femi's lips trembled, but no words came. "The worst part is not that you were poor once," Lillian said. "The worst part is that you had a blind heart even after being helped." Tears gathered in Mrs. Margaret's eyes. Clara covered her mouth. Femi reached toward Lillian as if desperation alone could pull her back. "I love you," he said quickly. "I swear, I still love you." Lillian's face changed then, not into anger but into something sadder. "No," she said. "Do not say that." Femi stared. "You never loved me," she said. "Not truly. If you had, you would have seen me when I stood beside you with nothing to gain." He shook his head wildly. "That is not true." "It is," Lillian said. "You do not regret losing me. You regret losing what you could have had with me." That sentence landed like a blow. Femi's shoulders dropped. His face crumpled in a way that made even strangers look away. Lillian stepped back from him. "I am done," she said. And with those words she refused him completely. Mrs. Margaret broke first after that.
She turned on Vanessa with a cry full of rage and regret. "You ruined us!" Clara joined in through tears. "You lied to us! You lied about everything!" Femi, still on his knees, looked at Vanessa with hatred now, as if blaming her could change what he had done with his own hands. Vanessa tried to defend herself, but Lillian raised a hand slightly, and the room quieted. "No," she said. They all looked at her. "Do not put everything on her now." Mrs. Margaret's mouth trembled. "But she only exposed what was already inside all of you," Lillian said. Silence. "Greed," she continued. "Pride. Class arrogance. That was already in your hearts. Vanessa did not create it. She only found it and used it." No one answered, because no one could. The ceremony ended with Lillian officially honored, blessed, and welcomed fully into her place. And once it was over, the fall of the Adeyemi family began almost at once. Business people pulled away from them. Calls stopped coming. Meetings were cancelled. Names that once answered their messages suddenly became too busy. Their business reputation collapsed so fast that even they could hardly understand it. Within weeks, their social standing died. Adeyemi Construction, already weak beneath its pride, finally gave way and sank into full bankruptcy. But the worst shock came later. It happened when the truth about Vanessa finally came out. She was not rich, not even from an ordinary wealthy family. Her designer life had been borrowed from lies. Her money had come from old politicians, aging senators, married CEOs, and powerful men she clung to in exchange for gifts, access, and temporary comfort. She had built a false life around herself and hoped to use that borrowed image to secure Femi and escape the poverty she truly came from. Now that plan had failed too. When the truth came out fully, even Femi was too stunned to speak at first. Mrs. Margaret sat down like her legs could no longer carry her. Clara cried for 2 days. And Femi looked like a man who had finally seen the full cruelty of his own choices. His mother's regret became something ugly and deep. Again and again she said the same thing in broken whispers. "We threw away a gem." But it was worse than that. They had not thrown away a gem for a stone. They had thrown away a gem for a stone already rotting from the inside. Vanessa had been guilty of all the things she accused Lillian of, and far more. In the end, the Adeyemi family became a warning story. A family that ate the blessing inside its own house because it looked too ordinary. A family that threw away loyalty for appearance. A family that reached for shine and ended up holding dirt. Time moved. The noise around the scandal slowly faded. The storms settled. And one quiet evening, Lillian stood on the balcony of a private family residence, looking out over the city lights. She had changed clothes after another long day of meetings, greetings, and new responsibilities. The crown of expectation was real now. Her name carried even more weight than before. But her heart was still her own. She heard footsteps behind her and did not turn immediately. She already knew who it was. Lawrence stopped beside her. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then he said softly, "The city is finally breathing again." Lillian smiled faintly. "Maybe." He looked at her. "I want to tell you something without interruption this time." She turned to face him fully. Lawrence did not hesitate. "I love you," he said. The words were simple. No performance. No pressure. Just truth. He continued. "And I need you to know something clearly. I did not fall for you because you are rich. I did not fall for a family name. I did not fall for the title you carry now." Lillian held his gaze. "I fell for the woman who walked into a collapsing boardroom in a cleaner's uniform and saved my company without trembling," he said. "I fell for the woman who stayed calm when powerful people mocked her, the woman who kept her dignity when others had none, the woman who never had to announce her worth to be worth something." Lillian's eyes softened. Lawrence let out a slow breath. "And yes," he added, with the smallest smile, "I am grateful Femi let you go. Because of that, I got the chance to know a gem honestly." That touched her deeply. For a moment she looked away. Then she looked back. The feelings in her heart for him were no longer small. She knew that now. But she also knew what loss had cost her. 2 years. 2 precious years of trust, silence, sacrifice, and pain. So when she spoke, her voice was gentle but clear. I feel strongly for you too. Something in Lawrence's face changed at once. But she lifted a hand lightly. Do not rush me, she said. I have lost 2 years already. I will not give my heart carelessly again. Lawrence nodded without argument. I am not asking you to rush, he said. I'm only asking you not to shut the door. Lillian looked at him for a long moment. Then she gave him the kind of smile that begins in the eyes before it reaches the lips. I am not shutting it. That was enough. More than enough. Lawrence smiled too, and in that quiet place above the city, with the old pain behind them and the future still unwritten, something new began between them. Not a rushed love, not a careless one, but something stronger. Something honest. Something that had seen the worst and still chose hope. Lillian turned back to the city lights, and Lawrence stood beside her. The night was calm. Her heart was healing. And for the first time in a very long time, the future no longer felt like something to survive. It felt like something she could walk into with peace,